So when it comes to shallow cranking in the winter, generally when I'm working down a bank, I'm always approaching like kind of 45-degree angle. Like I don't want to be too close to the bank, but a cast where I can kind of keep my bait coming towards me at a 45-degree angle with the bank. Some of your fish are going to be up there really tight, shallow, and then some will be out kind of deeper under the boat. But this gets you kind of a good, keeps your bait in that strike zone most of the time where your bait's hitting the bottom, which is essential when cranking for the most part. You always want that bait bouncing off rocks, sticks, whatever's down there. But a point is always, we call it, in around South Carolina, shallow winter cranking is a big thing, and we call it corners. When I'm approaching a point, it is a point, but also a corner is a point. And what I call a corner is right here ahead of us, we've got just a little break in the bank. It can go back into a little cut right there, but that is a corner. It's a corner of this bank where it hits the edge and makes a 90-degree bend. And it's basically a small point is what it is. So when I'm approaching this corner, which is a likely spot when cranking down this creek bank, you always want to approach it. I'll make a couple casts to each corner. So your first cast is always going to be up there pretty shallow. A lot of fish will sit up shallow, and you crank it back. Your technique is just, I pretty much reel my crankbait, keep it on the bottom. The colder it gets, you almost do more of like a drag and keep it slow moving, kind of pause it every now and then, and keep your bait moving and tight to the bottom. You always want it on the bottom, plowing, hitting rocks, sticks, whatever. But your first cast usually is up there shallow, but then a lot of times there might be a little rock out deeper off this corner. So if you're just 45 degree in this bank, moving, casting up tight to the bank, you're gonna miss some of those fish. The school could actually be out a little deeper, and I'll make 3 or 4 casts, one tight, one out, and then one even farther out, as long as my bait's hitting the bottom on every one of these corners until you find them stacked up on one. That's the cool thing about winter cranking. It's just like any other type of winter fishing. They're hard to catch, but when you find them, there's a lot of fish in one area. It's just like any deep fishing in the winter. They group up in big groups, and it could be on a little shallow corner like this. So that's what you're paying attention to, little subtle things on these type banks, and that's just a little small corner, and I make 3 or 4 casts to every one. I'll just parallel the bank, make it quick cast and moving just like I would any other bait. But when you come to a likely spot, such as a little rock pile or corner as I call it, you want to make multiple casts to that, because it may take a few casts to get them to bite. And then once you do, it may be every cast for a few seconds. So the appropriate, knowing what you're looking at and not just simply cranking down the bank makes a big difference. If you, like I love throwing a buzz bait down the bank other times of year, but then you're just trying to cover as many miles as possible. This, you might have to really, really hit these key areas. Get a little closer, and I'll make one over it, because you know there's a little drop gonna be on the back side of that corner where it goes in that pocket. So now I'm cranking up the back side and coming up the corner. So, and this is a prime example of rocks like you're looking for. You got some rocks up there shallow. That always makes these little corners better. Any type of rock holds a little heat, get some crawfish around it, and it's just a more likely scenario. But every time you come to one of these, you'll make multiple angle casts on it, and make sure you get a bait across where you think that school might be holding. So your cadence with a crankbait, as I said, when you're cranking, it's pretty cold, so the fish aren't gonna be real active. That's why I use this slower reel, because it's hard to slow yourself down enough to use a high-speed gear ratio reel. So you kind of want to keep your bait moving pretty slow, really. I mean, you're not dragging it necessarily, but you are you're not fishing it like you would a buzz bait, you know. So a pretty slow retrieve, depending on how cold it is usually better. And a lot of not just constant reels. There's a fish right there. That one ate it real shallow up on the bank. Not a big fish, but a good good cranking fish. Got a whole mouthful of the little yozuri. When you're fighting a fish on a crankbait, you really want to play them when you get them near the boat. I'm not much to flop them all around the boat, but you want to look at your bait. See, like this fish, I can tell he's got a whole mouthful of crankbait, and I don't have to worry about him coming off. You can see right there, He's got it in both sides of his mouth. Those are there, but when you're fighting him up to the boat, that you never want to change direction much. If I saw this fish and he just barely got the tail like that, you don't want to change directions too much, because then you're just going to pull that hook out the wrong way. So generally when they're coming upside the boat, you want to work them around the boat and keep the fish moving the same way the whole time, because a crankbait is kind of a tricky bait to keep fish hooked on. It's a nice little largemouth there. Let him go.
And the information Bass University provides isn't your basic run-of-the-mill fishing video. This is specific information from A to Z to help you learn, get to the water, and become a better angler quickly.